All right, guys. All right. I'm a little distracted today. Okay, yeah, you guys can hear me. So, I'm a little bit distracted today. I'll just tell you about my day. Today, I was actually woke up really early, just couldn't sleep. Probably gonna have to work out my arm muscles later on. Hopefully, get some rest. But this morning, I woke up, was trying to get a couple things done, like taking my ass to the gym. Yes, I know that I'm overweight, and I know that I need to fucking exercise. So what I was trying to do is take my ass to the gym today. Funny thing is, I fucking went, and by the time I got outside, I was like, God damn it, it fucking feels good. It's early September in Chicagoland, and it motherfucking feels good outside. I mean, like, it feels fucking awesome. And I fucking thought I got this. Anyway, it fucking feels good outside. And I was like, shit, it's fucking awesome outside. So it was supposed to be a leg day today. It was supposed to be a leg day. I was supposed to go to the gym, do fucking legs, call it a motherfucking day. But I got outside and I was like, fuck, it feels good out here. So I ended up going to the gym, doing another back and chest and shoulders day. I don't really do too much heavy lifting at the gym because I'm trying to go multiple times a week toward the same muscle groups. Um, and so I went ahead and did my gym workout. With me doing my gym workout, um, I did my 20 minutes of weights. I kind of consigned myself to doing 20 minutes of weights. One, because I get fucking horribly bored in the gym. I get like extremely bored in the gym. I'm not gonna lie about it. And so I did my 20 minutes of weights. With me doing my 20 minutes of weights, I ended up coming home, grabbing my bike, throwing it in my truck, and fucking doing about a mile and a half around a bike trail circuit because it was fucking awesome. And like maybe it is me. Maybe I am somebody who just enjoy the beauty of women of all different shapes and sizes. As you could saw in my video that I did the other day, talking about the idiot who's like, I don't like the way these women look, which is fucking amazing to me because, man, like, did you see some of these women? Like all different types and shapes and sizes. I don't know. So I enjoyed the sights that I saw. Hint, hint, hint. And this is not objectifying women. It's just like I'm just fucking highly sexual. I'm a highly sexual person, and you know, hey, you don't you don't exist for my approval, but I definitely approve the fact that you exist and look very appealing to me. That being said, I did do my workouts and I came home. I started fucking playing Conan like I'm playing now. You guys can't see it yet. And well, I was like, fuck, okay. I'm gonna start on the hour mark to say, oh yeah, it's time for me to game. And then like it just kept being pushed back because sometimes I forget to fucking just game for just enjoyment. Like I will say this. I am playing Conan Exiles and I've been like getting into it ever since I've got on a PVE conflict server. That's the server I'm on now. And shit, man, it's like I'm fucking really enjoying it. Okay, good. I don't have more. So I'm actually do some gaming in Conan, and then probably later on I'm gonna actually get on and just do straight gaming. And since I'm doing basically farming in Conan, it doesn't need me to tackle my brain much. Well, the game doesn't need me to tackle my brain much, so might as well get on and do a video for you guys. So let's um let's go ahead and do that video. Let's enjoy ourselves. Start the show. You can support me at patreon.com/Crimson60620 PS4 Gaming. And you can also follow me at Facebook, Crimson60620 PS4 Gaming. Thanks for your support and enjoy the video. All right. Shit. So, um, what's up, guys? Playing a little Conan right now, and so yeah, we're gonna go through the Oedipus complex. And I actually didn't watch this video when I named it this way, but it kind of goes back to that story that if you watch my video where I was talking about a young older capitalist versus a young revolutionary, tanky. That's where I get the name from. I'm just being an asshole, really. Let me see. Is it a way that I can actually? I gotta redesign this because I don't know. Wait, let me see something. No, wrong thing. Chat. I want to actually change the settings. So, appearance. Yes, that's where it is. Scale. Embed and stream. Background. There we go. All right. Put that back to settings. I promise you guys, one of these days, I am going to get a better. Actually, I'm going to start with a better graphics card. Once I get a better graphics card, I think a lot of shit would actually go better. And remember, I'm trying to actually hit a goal of 1,000 followers on Facebook. I'm trying to get, and I'm way far from that Facebook goal. But I am trying to get give me a second. Just trying to make sure that everything gets set up right as it should be. All right, let's refresh this. All right, cool. And let's refresh this. Properties. Nope, wrong thing. Come on, chat. There we go. All right, cool. All right, so, damn it, I just ate something. Oh well. I do have a lot of shit cooking. I'm actually trying to build my little fort a little bit better. And part of that actually is making sure that I have some of these thralls. Like, I really need to make sure that they're working and fucking doing the shit that they supposed to do. Really, I forgot some of this stuff doesn't automatically turn on. But we're gonna do some Richard Wolf today. I know I'm not a I don't have any economic degrees. I get that, but just the shit interests me. Especially with this current political climate, this current climate of, you know, this current climate of the election season and the impending doom of the recession that is really, really bearing down. I want to actually talk about this shit. I will say that I'm not a dyed and true socialist in the sense that a lot of people want to actually characterize the word. I do feel that workers should have a little bit more power, and I fucking feel. There we go. Don't want to ruin the illusion. I have to seem like I'm in Conan's world. um, I don't want it to devolve into a world where people are quite literally just trying to survive and using any means necessary trying to survive. I don't I don't think anybody will like a world like that I'm currently playing in right now. Well, so let's get to it. Here we go. I'm glad I checked while I'm doing this because I don't think you guys can hear it. There we go. And this is a little bit loud in my headphones. So I'll leave that up and leave the mixer. Alright. Leave that mixer down just a little bit. Alright, cool. Alright, cool. Alright, so the decline of corporate capitalism. Now, I'm not for a planned economy, no, because that's stupid. Because you will still have people that have too much power trying to control what everybody else does. And great, I'm glad I came back because it's a motherfucking sandstorm. Come on, you bastard. So, anyway, let's hurry the fuck back. Just until this shit blows over. But anyway, we'll have to. I'm not for a planned economy. But this shit right here, where you actually get um, corporate power is actually waning, where you get corporations that are actually getting like, hold on, okay, we're gonna give up some of my powers, just don't come with the fucking pitchforks. It's fucking amazing because we didn't have these discussions years ago. We didn't have these discussions 10 years ago, 5 years ago. This shit, they're fucking scared because not only are they scared because somebody who may actually be a socialist or a social democrat may actually win the nomination, but it's like people are getting those pitchforks ready. And what are you guys gonna do about it? Are you gonna bunker down and say, "Well, no, everything is okay, everything is fine"? Are you really going? Are you gonna try to control the change, or watch the change control you? Let's continue.
Welcome, friends, to an edition of Economic Update, a weekly program devoted to the economic dimensions of our lives: jobs, incomes, debts, those coming down the road for us, and those facing our children in the years ahead. I'm your host, Richard Wolff. I've been a professor of economics all my adult life, and that, in a way, has prepared me to present this last week's economic highlights for your interest.
I just want to say this is actually pretty fun and pretty fucking amazing. That he has this, like, you would never think that somebody who is a Marxist economist would actually be like platformed and is well known as he is. He is well known and he is platformed. It's just fucking ironic that this shit is happening. It's just like, okay, yeah. Um, what say you? Like, this is just, it's fucking hilarious. But go ahead. Let's continue. Sorry about that. Setting some stuff up. There we go. Pop back. Press the wrong button. Let's continue.
I'm going to begin with what's been on everyone's mind who watches the media or listens to them, namely these enormous storms, first in Texas, then in Florida, with more apparently churning their way up from the Caribbean and threatening to bother us yet again in serious ways. I'm not going to talk about the natural dimensions of it. You've heard that story. I'm not going to talk about the heroic efforts to rescue people, which are indeed stimulating and provocative in the best sense. I want to talk about what the media generally doesn't talk about, which...
So this is topical. This is actually done not too long ago. I think this was actually last Saturday. I think they come out with the show every Saturday, if I'm not mistaken, which is kind of important how topical the situation is, especially since this is during hurricane season and we're having so much of the shit that's happening during the fucking hurricane seasons. But let's continue.
Which is the relationship between our economic system, capitalism, and these storms and what they mean. So I'll start with a few dimensions and then build up to what I think is the big question.
And I hate that I'm having to keep interrupting this. The plan with this actual base is not to be my permanent base. It's actually just to be a stronghold that I have. A stronghold that I would have to just as a way station because I need to go and have everything protected so when I move the motherfucking base a little bit further north. This is just like right around New River, so it's not that far from New River, probably about a 5-minute walk from New River. That's actually right there, leads to Big New River. So that's just me talking about this. But let's continue.
First, a few dimensions. One of the things that got a lot of play, and I'm glad it did, was what we call in economics price gouging. The two biggest examples were when Delta Airlines jacked up the price of a flight out of one of these areas from $400 and something to $3,000 and something, simply taking advantage of the desperate need for people to get out of the way of a desperate storm. There was another pic.
Now, that's fucked up. That is really fucked up. That one, you actually gonna risk. You're gonna say, "Well, you want to lead a storm? Let's almost multiply it times 10." That's like going Kaido Ken times 10 on an airline price because you don't know a storm is coming your way. And I know Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball Super reference. I know, I get it. I did it for a reason. Anyway, it's fucking monstrous and barbaric that you're gonna say, "Hey, want to have some of that life? Well, why don't you fly Delta Airlines? We're gonna give you some of that life. It's gonna cost you $3,000 to make sure you leave the storm, so you can get you some of that life." And I'm like, "What the fuck? Wow!" And people will say, "Well, it's capitalism." That's fine and good until your ass is the one who's paying $3,000 for an airline ticket. But let's continue.
That flashed across the media of a Best Buy store where a case of bottled water was being sold in excess of $40. In other words, sellers of commodities were taking advantage of a natural disaster, so it was called, to really squeeze people at a moment when they had no choice.
42 motherfucking $42 for a fucking bottle of water. Where Powerade at the dollar store was 99 cents. And somebody I don't really agree with, but I watch because he actually gives thoughtful information about some of his arguments. I'm saying I don't agree. I don't agree 100% of his arguments, but he has a true case by what he says. Bo the fifth column. And if you haven't watched his channel, oh God, I guarantee you, watch his channel. And he's somebody who I enjoy watching his content. He would be self-described. No, I wouldn't even say that. He just says he's in the South. He's from the South. He's in the South. He has history with knowing about conflicts. I don't know exactly but he's an activist. And he said, "It's like shit. Go if you're worried about hydration, motherfucking buy you some fucking Gatorade or Powerade. Or go get some cheap ass liquid to fucking flush your toilet. Don't worry about. Stop trying to let these people gouge you in fucking storms." And like $42 for a bottle of fucking water. God damn it. Capitalism. But let's continue.
When they were desperate. It's an example of how markets work. Markets are a part of our system, and markets, as you all know, depend on the laws of supply and demand. And if the demand becomes desperate for people literally trying to save their lives, well, then you can charge, quote, what the market will bear. And that's what they did big time, all over the place. Not just those that were recorded by the media, but thousands of examples that were not, or at least not in a general way. What is this about? Well, you do have, and I apologize for my fellow economists, since many of them do this, you do have those who believe that profit is holy, or at least as holy as anything can be, and that therefore profit can never be questioned. So since the people who gouge in moments of crisis make more profits by jacking up their prices, well then, that must be reasonable, and indeed, my fellow economists, more than I would like to admit, have been busy in recent days justifying this unbelievable behavior.
And this is kind of reflective of why some of this shit just does not need to stand anymore. Like, how do you justify taking advantage of people because the market can bear it? Like, for real? But they don't have anything about that when it comes to fucking wages. Oh, wait a minute. Let's not fucking pay people like they deserve to be paid because the market can bear it. Let's not make sure people have a fucking living wage because the market can really bear it. No. Let's see how far we can push people to the edge because the market can bear it. The problem is you don't know what the market can bear until you push too much. And then the market can bear inventing another Dr. Guillotine. And yeah, French Revolution reference. But let's continue.
But I'm also proud of the American people, at least in the sense that the bulk of the comments that I could see did notice that if you jack up the prices, if that's how the market works in a time of crisis, making it more difficult for all of the people suffering to cope with a crisis situation in order to benefit the profits of a relative few, that might not just be the best way to manage an economic crisis or a natural disaster, and maybe that suggests that the market and the system of profit-driven decisions in business isn't the best way to go, maybe not just in emergencies, but more generally. Then I noticed another aspect from the capitalist system. Some years ago, when big, profitable insurance companies noticed that storms kept coming, particularly to Florida, they withdrew from the state. This is another aspect of the capitalist system. If you can't make profit, don't do it. Which then opens the question, what happens to the people who need whatever it is you do that you're not doing anymore?
So this is actually pretty fucking interesting. Do you know that like a lot of businesses have changed or had loopholes for different services that they once offered in a lot of different places because it's not profitable or they can't get as much profit. The whole fucking lifetime limits on healthcare was part of that. I can't make the profit like I fucking want to. That's why. That's fucking why. I get leery about when people say, well, let's remove the state lines from around the states when it comes to health insurance. Because you're going to get some sleazebag company. And it's wrong for me to say sleazebag. You're going to get some fucking amoral piece of shit company that's going to say, well, there's no profit in there because we have to maximize profit. Let's move to this state where we can maximize motherfucking profit. And yeah, I said amoral because they have no fucking morals. And that's the fucking problem. At least if you said that you're fucking guilty and you have morals and you're evil, at least you can actually say evil can be defeated. But when you don't have any motherfucking morals and you're just doing it because it makes business sense, then how do you fight that fucking argument? You don't. That's why it's meant to be the way it is. But let's continue.
In the way of Allstate and other big insurance companies that withdrew. Well, lots of little companies came in to catch hold of the profits that could be made. There it is, the profit system, by setting up small insurance companies to fill the vacuum left when the more profitable big ones withdrew. Then the problem is an insurance company is only as good as the money it has to make good on the claims of the policyholders. And if the insurance company is small, it may not have, oh, you can see where this story is going, can't you? Well, you're right, that's where it's going. The little insurance companies that now do the bulk of the business in Florida don't have enough money to cover their claims. Not themselves and not in the reinsurances that they themselves take out to cover the situation. So the fear growing in Florida now is that the government will in the end have to backstop, because that's how a capitalist system solves the difficulties of private profit, by fixing it with public money. That looks like what it's going to happen. Either the taxpayers of Florida will have to kick it in, or the people making claims won't get what they thought they could get when they bought the insurance policy. What a way to handle natural emergencies. But these are the little stories. I want to get to the big one. And this is actually more applicable to the text.
All right, so that's what's fucked up. I mean, like, we can go back to the video I did about Mark Blythe where he talks about this. It wasn't that people just didn't know how to save their money. No, a lot of companies made bad bets and bad decisions. And what ended up happening is when those companies went bust, Lehman Marcus, fucking 100-year old, fucking more than 100-year old establishment, it went bust because it fucking gambled. And because of that, taxpayers had to bail them out. Because of that, our fucking bank deposits would have not been honored because companies were making bets with poor ass decisions. But it was the people's fault for wanting the fucking house after you encouraged them to get shitty ass housing or take out shitty ass loans where you knew they couldn't afford it, but you were making hand over fist money and you didn't want anything to stop that. Fuck out of here. And now they doing it again, where it's, well, you better protect us because if you don't protect us, we're gonna take every fucking thing. I'm tired of this shit. I'm tired of seeing this shit where they're like, fucking help save us first. Oh, cool, it's done. Oh, fuck, cool, it's done. Now I can actually move this one over here. Yeah. Okay, cool. Cool. Damn it, cool. Yes. And put this right here. Put my dancer right inside. Oh, this is a chick dancer. Yes. What is she gonna dance like? Yes. I'm sorry, I need to go to a strip club soon. Did I just say that on camera? Anyway, but yeah, let's go. Let's continue.
Situation than to Florida because of the way the storm evolved. The amazing thing about the Harvey storm in Texas was the absence of preparation. The governor of the state of Texas goes on the television during the crisis to answer reporters' questions. Why did you not order an evacuation of all of the areas lying in the path of this horrible storm so they would get out of there and not be threatened in their lives and in their homes? And his answer was to scoff at the reporter and say, you don't seem to understand. If I said evacuate, the highway would immediately be filled with millions of cars who would they be unable to move. Well, this is a none too subtle way of saying, I can't handle it. We're not prepared. I learned later that the ground in Texas around the area that was hit is spongy. It absorbs a certain amount of water, and then it can't anymore. In other words, you have to prepare. And now let's look at the economics of preparing. Who's going to do that? The developer, eager to build tracts of homes, eager to build shopping and industrial malls, eager to build roads if you're a construction company. They don't want to hear about all the difficulties. They want to get the contract, build the house, build the people who buy the house, and leave. The long-term effects are not part of their profit calculation because they'll be out of there once the development is undertaken.
So this actually is pretty interesting because what ends up happening is what you actually see is to upgrade. A lot of developers, they don't care about the sustainability of um, they don't care about the sustainability of the properties after they've actually done it. They just care about building it and being done with it. And that actually leads to a lot of that leads to a lot of people that actually, I have some crazy ass friends. Okay, Facebook. So a lot that leads to just a lot of short term profits. Short term profits and long term losses. I was talking with somebody at work, and this is actually just totally how I see it. If you ever notice something, the corporate culture nowadays in a lot of things is that you see a lot of people. You used to see a lot of people actually rawhide bindings. I'm trying to figure out something about this rope that I need, but you see a lot of companies actually uh, where people used to work for a company for 20 or 30 years. That has actually changed now with CEOs and thus corporate culture moving away from having where you can actually have long term goals, because what ends up happening is a lot of companies, they're, you know, well, they're approaching a situation where we're only going to be looking for short term goals. We're going to be looking for short term gains. And it's never for things past the next quarter. It's never thinking about I'm going to retire from this company. No, it's a lot of have to do with I want to I want to make the easiest amount of money in the quickest amount of time. And so nobody cares about long term goals of the employees. No one cares about that long term, culture where we're keeping people for 5, 10 years. Nobody cares about that. So that's why we have these short term goals. So yeah, found it. I'm looking to check and see if I can actually increase the bindings for the rawhide bindings to see if I can upgrade them and so I can drag something a little bit further. Damn it, and I can't see it. No, I can't see it. I was seeing if I can actually increase the rawhide bindings thing, but I guess I can't. Um, yeah, it's just fucking unbelievable. But let's continue.
Gee, they might then push against the government holding up the project until they can decide what's safe. The government mandating walls and barriers to protect. The government deciding to move a production site from one location to another to be less risky. And that would give the government power. And private capitalists don't like to do that unless the government is helping them. And these things don't seem to help them. We have a system that systematically underprepares. And that's true in Texas, and that's true in Florida. Because it's not privately profitable, no one is doing it. And the government, demonized by the very private profit mechanisms and institutions of our culture. The government is unable to raise the money to do these things. It's constantly portrayed as wasting money, as if intrinsically it was less efficient to do something in the government than it was to do it in the private sector. And let me be an economist for a moment. There's absolutely no evidence for this. There are as many examples of inefficient private production as there are of inefficient government production, and the same is true of efficiency.
So, and this is a killer part about it. So, a lot of people have this belief that there is so much government bureaucracy. And this is one thing that I never understood, especially with the whole Medicare for All debate. The government sector of health insurance is actually more productive. Not only that, but fun fact, there are insurance corporate bureaucrats just as there are government bureaucrats. Use that stone for something else. Bureaucrats exist in all fucking systems, corporate, private, or otherwise. Thank you. They do. They just do. Like, that's something that I've never understood. The whole idea that we don't want a government bureaucrat telling us what to do, but you'll be okay with a corporate bureaucrat telling you what to do. Okay. Because I need to build a will of pain and I need to get a fucking shit. That's a name thrall. That's why. God damn it. Okay, so what do I need to do? Speaking of bureaucrats, this fucking system is a bureaucratic system. But let's continue.
Besides which, how efficient is it to now have hundreds of billions of dollars, if you combine Texas, Florida, and who knows how many others coming down the pike? How efficient is it not to take the protective measures that could have and that should have been taken? One final word here. There is a society near where the storms hit that's different, that gives the government an enormous role. We're used to making fun of that society. It's called Cuba. So I want to read you from the New York Times on the 10th of September the following story, and I'm quoting from the New York Times on that day. Quote, "While the Cuban response to the storm seemed to be a well-oiled machine, elsewhere in the Caribbean, the government reaction has been halting." Now, this is the New York Times language for saying the Cubans have a well-oiled system of preventing and protecting because they're not driven by private profit the way we are. There's a lesson here, but of course, like all lessons, if you're not open to learning the lesson, well, then you won't. My next economic update has to do with something I have come back to over and over again, but I have to, because it's an ongoing crisis that's economic as much as anything.
So that was actually pretty slick. So, like, he just said, he's like, yeah, but Cuba had their shit together. It got so bad, and this was published a few days ago. It was published a few days ago, so it's actually about a year old because it's talking about Hurricane Harvey and the storms that hit fucking Florida around that same time. But it's telling that when Hurricane Harvey hit, even though Cuba had got hit by part of Hurricane Harvey, they actually start offering the U.S. for help. It's like, yo, we're not being an asshole here, but if y'all need some fucking help, here's the help that y'all need. Like, it's just like with Hurricane Maria. Like, it was like, yo, I know we kind of like are enemies, but dude, like, if you need help with fucking people, we cool. Like, you know, we're fucking Cuba isn't a fucking even a thorn in the U.S. society. It's just an embarrassment. Cuba is quite literally now an embarrassment. They don't have like you know, It's like they don't even have like, oh, we're gonna influence. No, I was like, no, dude. They went from being the antagonists in the Caribbean to trying to be the world's the Caribbean's medic. Quite literally, you can go to fucking like you can. They are literally trying to be the medic of the Caribbean, and like with all the fucking history that has been going bad between Cuba and the U.S., for them to fucking offer this shit, it just shows how, like, it just shows how behind the times some people are still stuck in. Because they're holding on. They'd rather say, fuck you because reasons. To somebody that's generally just want to fucking help. But let's continue.
Thing else. It's the drug crisis, or more precisely, the epidemic of overdoses from opiates and opioids in this country, now running at the rate of 50 to 60,000 deaths from overdose per year in the United States. These are numbers that are staggering. I'm going to explain in a few minutes how different they are from country to country, depending on how the economy deals with this awful situation. But just to give you an idea and whet your appetite, I'm going to tell you a little bit later about another country, Portugal, not that far away, which handles its drug problems differently. Deaths per million can be measured and have been measured in the United States and in Portugal. In the United States, deaths per million, about 185. Overdose deaths per million of American citizens, 185 per million over these last 2 or 3 years.
Damn it. That's, wow. So for every million, we have 185. And the U.S. is about 300 million. 185 million deaths. Oh shit, he took the shield. Oh, he didn't Captain American. I'm sorry, I'm looking for him with the shield and shit. But it, like, that's why you saw these, like, in red fucking states where the pharmaceutical companies have actually bought off a lot of fucking politicians. You see where these pharmaceutical companies are getting motherfucking hit with so many motherfucking fines and lawsuits and settlements. Johnson & Johnson had to pay $500 million because they help facilitate more of the opioid crisis situation. But let's continue.
Dying. In Portugal, how many per million? 3. Not 300, not 30, 3. How is it possible that in our country 185 per million kill themselves by overdose, and in Portugal, which once had a very severe drug problem, has reduced it to 3? Well, I will come back and I will tell you. But first, let's talk about the economics of the drug business. Here are...
Wow. I went back and watched some of my videos from a year ago. And I mean, like, I'm not criticizing this at all. It is a little bit of a difference. It is. But, like, just the consistency of just like, hey, this is fucked up. This has been fucked up. And this remains to be fucked up. It's just something that crossed my mind. I'm just being just a critic of just the way everything looks. And again, it's not just me just trying to be an asshole. It's just me just paying attention to it. But let's continue.
Some of the businesses involved in drugs, in the whole drug epidemic, and so on. First, there are all the businesses that produce the drugs, that transport the drugs, and that distribute the drugs. Many of them are legal businesses, many of them are illegal businesses. But in terms of the drug epidemic, it really doesn't matter because they are a big business employing thousands of people, earning millions, if not billions of dollars, producing, transporting, and distributing it. Then there's a second group of businesses, those involved in the medical care and the medicines for people already addicted, because the number of addicted is, of course, much larger than the number that are dying from overdose of those drugs.
So it is not only a business to sell the shit where people get addicted, but it is also a business to treat people that have been to treat people of a problem that the pharmaceutical companies cause. Like, and these people aren't like, okay, if you want to make fun of like House. House was a fucking addicted to opioids. Like he was fucking addicted to opioids. He even popped it, and he had a legitimate reason at first, but he just started popping opioids, and yeah, wasn't fun. He was an asshole even before he like started to get really fucking strung out. And I don't know. I don't fucking know. But let's continue.
Then there is the enormous cost of the criminalization of drugs, the enormous apparatus of police, of prisons. Someone once told me that a majority of the people in prisons, directly or indirectly, have something to do with the drug problem in the United States. We know from statements made by the Haldeman-Ehrlichman combo, those that are left from the Nixon administration, that prosecuting African Americans and young radicals for drug possession became a way of decimating that part of the population, denying them the vote, because if you have a felony conviction, you can't vote in many states, United States, and so on. But prisons and staffing prisons and supplying prisons, that's another big business which might be harmed if you legalized or, better yet, solved your drug problem.
So this goes back to, ironically, our friendly neighborhood troll Jill. It's like, no, the laws weren't racist. Where clearly it has been documented that the reason why the Nixon administration went after drugs as high as it is was to disenfranchise African American voters. And this wasn't 1850. This wasn't 1900. This was the fucking 1970s. But let's continue.
It's a failure. We've had this war on drugs now for many years. It hasn't done very well. According to what I can see, the death rate from overdose being worse now than it has been in a long time. So we're not succeeding in dealing with it, and I suspect that the economic interests that have money to be made from this industry and have been making a lot of money from it are not a small part of why this war on drugs seems to be so horrible and unsuccessful. And then the last thing that just happened this last couple of weeks. The Attorney General in the state of New Mexico, Hector Balderas, filed suit in court against the opioid-producing pharmaceutical companies for systematically misinforming and basically finding ways to sell their death-dealing drugs.
So this, and like I said, this is a video. Even though it was published this year, this is where you saw the start of these things going. So let's continue.
He specifically singled out the following, and I thought you'd be interested to know. Purdue Pharma, Johnson & Johnson.
Purdue Pharma, which actually settled for like, I think $100 million in like a red state, where it was red state lawmakers that were actually making this claim. Johnson & Johnson, I think it was Oklahoma or Kansas. Kansas. Wow, shit. Can't English today, obviously. They 500 million. But this is interesting. Let's continue.
Endo Health Solutions, Teva Pharmaceutical Industries, and activists. He accused them publicly of, quote, falsely representing and downplaying the highly addictive nature of the painkillers to doctors. In doing this, Mr. Balderas cited documents from the Centers for Disease Control. I won't repeat those all to you. I just want you to know that New Mexico is now the eighth state to have its Attorney General file suit against these or other companies alleging that they systematically did what? Made profits by distributing killer drugs, addictive drugs, to people in ways that directly violate the law. That's the charge that now 8 states have levied. Now Portugal. 2001, Portugal was suffering from major problem with opiate-type drugs, heroin and so on. And so they made a drastic decision. They would legalize drug possession. Basically, no more punishment. You don't go to jail if you're caught with heroin or a synthetic version of heroin like fentanyl and so on. You get a reference to a drug treatment center, and you may get a very small fine. The money accumulated through such small fines and in other ways is used to provide a countrywide program of drug counseling, psychotherapy, medication, and so on. Overdose.
So what they did was, it was like, fuck it, we're doing it live. I'm sorry, wrong reference. But what they did literally was saying, like, okay, people are dying. This whole stupid ass war on drugs is not fucking working. And people are dying. So let's actually do some shit that would be beneficial. And you know what the fuck they did? They said, well, why are we doing a war on drugs? We can legalize, which in some cases, for certain things, people would actually have an issue with it, because small fines still disproportionately affect minority communities, things of that nature, and we would have to tweak a whole plan on everything. But what they came up with is, well, let's just make, if people want to do drugs, people have been doing drugs ever since we've known what drugs are. So let's just make it safer. So let's continue.
Deaths in Portugal are 3 per million, and in the United States, there are 185 per million. Something is working in one place, and something is not working in another. The big drug companies either didn't bother or weren't able to get the freedom to function in Portugal that they have in the United States. And I will keep talking about this crisis so long as the economics seem to dominate and keep that industry alive and growing in terms of its profits and in terms of the social damage it does. I also came across this last week and am presenting to you the findings of a new study. And this new study caught my attention because of who did it and what they were studying. So let me tell you first who did this study. It was carried out by the National School of Tropical Medicine at Baylor College of Medicine, and it was a study conducted in conjunction with the Alabama Center for Rural Enterprise, ACRE. Here's what it found: that a disease associated throughout the history of medicine with poverty has resurfaced in the United States decades after it was officially announced to have been eradicated. The disease is called hookworm.
What the fuck? A disease that is associated with poverty has now come back in the United States. Let's find out more about that, shall we?
Intestinal parasite that thrives, this is a quote from the story in The Guardian, on extreme poverty. Here's what it found. That in the state of Alabama, which is where this study was conducted, there are all kinds of incidences of hookworm that we thought we had eradicated. To give you just one example, in a survey of people living in Lowndes County, which is a county in Alabama, an area with a long history of racial discrimination and inequality, 34% of the people tested positive for traces of hookworm. A third of the people, and the reason the number is like that is because they haven't been looking for this since they thought it had been eradicated. If you want signs that the so-called economic recovery from the crash of 2008 has been a very variegated business, some people, the rich by and large, have recovered and the rest of us haven't. Here's another statistic that drives that point home. Poverty has returned of a kind we thought we had eradicated, and with it come diseases like hookworm. The last economic update, for which we will have time, is going to come in a minute. But before that, I want to remind you that we maintain two websites that are full of material like what we do on this program, elaborated in greater detail, that have interviews.
Yeah, this is an old video, but let's
that have press activities that we are engaged in. These websites are available 24/7. At no charge whatsoever. Make use of them. They're there for you to do that. The first one is rdwolf with 2fs.com, and the second one is Democracy at Work, that's all one word, democracyatwork.info. Become a partner of this program. Make use of what we produce in talking with your friends, your coworkers, your family. If you're interested in this material, then here's a resource available to you whenever it's convenient for you to do so. You can also find a video version of this program on patreon.com, Patreon, patreon.com for a video version. And finally, let me urge you back again to the two websites, rdwolf with 2fs.com and Democracy at Work, because there you can, with a click of your mouse, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, connect to us through YouTube, communicate to us. Let us know what you'd like us to cover, what you like and don't like about the program. It's a way of making the partnership we hope that develops between you and us more ongoing, more interactive than it might otherwise be.
So, since he's going to use this as a time to advertise his channel, why not me do the same? So, remember, this is Crimson 60620 YouTube channel. And you can find me at Crimson 60620 PS4 Gaming on Facebook, which you can actually watch me live as I multi-stream on this, my Crimson 60620 YouTube channel, and my Crimson 60620 Twitch channel. Yeah. Also, you can actually go to Lone Sage Art on my Etsy store and actually pick up some of my art, copies of my drawing. Finally, you can actually go to my Crimson 60620 DeviantArt page, where you can actually look at some of my drawings and actually buy prints there. So, let's continue.
Okay. The last economic update that we will have time for today has to do with the elite universities of the United States. I return to them from time to time because of their remarkable economic situation. This is an economics program. As I'm sure you know, because we've discussed it, elite universities, and indeed all universities, enjoy in the United States a tax exemption. That is, unlike you, when they buy something at the store, they don't pay a sales tax. Unlike you, when they earn income somehow, they don't pay an income tax, neither to the federal nor the state, nor if they're in a city which has an income tax, not to that either. They don't pay property taxes. They pay no taxes at all on their educational property and activities, which is mostly what they do. And this raises an interesting question, because they get all the public services that everybody else gets. If they
Yeah, and this is the funniest part about it. Now, he probably is going to go into the whole college should be free, which, and like, I'm going to say this. I did go to college and I didn't finish it. Wasn't, not even that it wasn't my cup of tea, but I wanted to actually start working and making money. And the field that I was trying to go into, thank God I didn't complete, was kind of shitty. Because I went for programming, specifically game design. And I'm glad I fucking didn't do that shit. Because I probably would have been more broke now and more overworked. Sorry. That fucking delayed onset muscle soreness is kind of kicking in. But for a 2-year program, 12 grand in student loans. I know that's better than a lot of other fucking places, but still, that's a lot for fucking. That's a lot. But let's continue.
They need the police come. If they need the fire department, they get the fire department. If they want the children of their employees to get a public education, indeed, if they want their employees to have a public education, they don't have to pay for the police or the fire or the schools that they benefit from. That's the value to them of a tax exemption. Most colleges and universities got these tax exemptions long ago in American history when the communities, states or localities decided that in order to have an educational institution.
All right, so I gotta really, I really put myself in a fucked up situation when it comes to this shit. So I kind of need a blacksmith to cut down on the cost of building the shit, but I can't get a blacksmith unless one of these wheels is like done. And I fucked myself with this because these are named thralls, so they're gonna take a fucking while. But that's the cost that I pay for teaching a thrall to know they fucking place. I have to use time. Just like I have to build up and use resources to fucking further educate thralls. See, I worked it into the video. Hot damn. I'm smart.
It being difficult and expensive to set one up, they would make it easier by foregoing taxes for a while. But in institutions that have been around, as the elite ones have, for hundreds of years, they are now very, very wealthy and long ago stopped being institutions that need a tax exemption in order to provide the teaching that helps our society. So why do they get it? That's a big question.
So, yeah, this is actually pretty fucking awful where you get a lot of companies. Shit, mute. That's the cost. You get a lot of companies actually using this shit to, not a lot of companies. You get a lot of schools actually using they had the benefit from actually being a group where in order to take off, they actually needed that push. Just like some businesses actually do. They need that a push to say, hey, this will help us. You actually also get that where they needed that push to say, hey, this benefits a lot of different people. But it's not needed anymore. These breaks that some of these schools have, it's fucking not needed. And yet it's still, it's just like what Bernie Sanders said, where some of the most profitable entities, like uh, oil or gas fucking companies, they still get fucking federal subsidies, and it's just like, what the fuck, man? Why?
Let me explore that then with you. Not long ago, the New York Times, in fact, had an editorial back in 2015 in which it pointed out critically that Yale University in that year had spent $480 million in fees to hedge funds to manage their endowment. During the same year that they paid...
Wait, $450 million in fees. The fucking head. If they don't pay any fucking federal tax, I'm done. I don't know what the fuck to do. I don't know what the fuck to say. Let's hear.
Paid out $480 million to hedge fund managers. They spent $170 million on all tuition and tuition assistance and fellowships for students. Let me do that again. They spent way more on fees to manage their billions in endowment than they provided in fellowships and in tuition assistance to all their students. 75% of the wealth owned by American universities, 75% is owned by 4% of the universities.
What the fuck, man? Like, seriously. How fucked up is that? About as fucked up as they would have almost had my ass right there. Okay, so I'm just gonna have to bite the bullet and get steel pickaxe. But let's continue. But okay, so 75% of the wealth of universities held by 4% of the colleges. And I could almost say that's a fucking good thing, because at least it's not 90% by 1% of the fucking 90% of the wealth. It's not held by 90% isn't held by 10% of the fucking colleges itself. Like at least it's a better step in the direction. Like, what the fuck, man? But let's continue.
Harvard, Yale, Princeton, you know who they are. So I was touched by the fact that universities like that are getting a tax exemption, billions that they would otherwise pay to support localities, states, and the federal government. They don't have to pay. They get all the services everybody else does, but they're not required to pay for them. Well, the initial rationale was they're helping everybody in the community. But then imagine what you do with the following statistic, which comes from the Equality of Opportunity Project. The elite universities, including Princeton and Yale, I'm quoting from the report, admit more students from the top 1% of earners in America than from the bottom 60% combined. More students from the 1% richest than from the bottom 60%. But it's the bottom 60% who suffer the consequences of the tax exemption. Because if you have to provide fire, police, and education to the elite universities, and they don't pay any taxes to pay for that, then it's you and me who pay for that. We pay the taxes that keep the fire and the police departments serving Harvard and Yale and Princeton.
Privatize the profit, socialize the loss. These motherfuckers, and I'm just being an asshole when I say it like this, but these individuals are actively reaping the benefits. Reaping the benefits of just they're reaping the benefits of being able to have all of these services that everybody else's have, but they're not paying it all into the system. That's fucked up. That is truly fucked up. They give more money to manage their endowments than they do to basically end tuition assistance. And then they will say, we pay millions for tuition or, research things or grants. But it's it's a third of what you pay to manage your own money. The fuck is wrong with these people? Let's continue.
The 60% suffer the consequences of the tax exemption, but their kids don't get to go to the school. It is a bizarre, upside-down, Robin Hood in reverse situation, isn't it? It's taking from the middle and the bottom to service the top. And that is the bottom line of much of today's set of economic updates. They're about a system that doesn't work anymore for the majority of the people. And that has to be confronted. Otherwise, all of these interconnected problems will continue to provide raw material for this program, but will not be overcome so that we can go on to other and more interesting things. Thank you very much for joining me in this first half hour of the program, and we will continue after a very short break.
And I don't know, let me look at the description of this. We off this week due to a federal holiday. Okay, so it was September the 2nd. But we hope you enjoyed this older episode with guest Chris Hodges. So, yeah. Oh, wow. This is actually gives columnist for Truth Dig. He teaches at Princeton University, place that he was just talking about, for incarcerated prisoners. He's a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist and a New York Times best-selling author. His most recent work is called America Farewell. All right, so let's continue.
Welcome back, friends, to the second half of Economic Update. As we often do in this second half, I am very pleased to introduce to you my guest for today. The introduction will be brief, not because of any lack of material. It's in the opposite problem. There's too much. My guest is Chris Hedges. He's a Pulitzer Prize-winning former reporter for the New York Times. He's the author of Wages of Rebellion, The Moral Imperative of Revolt. He is a speaker who crisscrosses both the United States and Canada and also is busy abroad. I bump into him from time to time. I've had the good fortune to do a few things together with him in recent years. So it is an enormous personal pleasure as well as a treat, I believe, for all of you to have a conversation with him about what's going on here in the United States and beyond that in the world. So welcome to our program, Chris.
Thanks, Rick.
All right, let me jump.
Okay, so we actually get this whole thing about, like, this is actually pretty interesting that you have this conversation. I don't know. So let's just continue.
Right into it, given what this program does, and ask you, where in the broader picture of what you see going on in the United States and beyond is the problem of the economic system, what we talk about on this program? I thought my viewers and listeners would enjoy how it looks from another perspective, from yours. You have broad interests, but in that, the capitalist system and its ways figure, and I'd like to hear you say a few things about it.
Well, since I've been tutored by your work, I think that Marx got it, that we're in the twilight stage of capitalism when, as Marx predicted, what capitalism does is essentially not only become parasitic, but cannibalistic. So you've deindustrialized.
So this is the key thing. And referencing back to the title, it was a prophecy that Oedipus was going to kill his father and marry his mother. Now, the way that played out was different than what capitalism is doing, where corporate capitalism is screwed his father, like killed his father, and is trying to get his mother democracy. But hey, let's continue.
The country. You've thrust, and we know the figures, the official figures of unemployment, of poverty are fixed. You've impoverished the country, deindustrialized the country, stripped social services, and you have large corporations essentially consuming the very machinery that sustains the state. And the whole notion of the common good, of the commons, of any kind of government as a structure to foster and maintain community has been jettisoned by neoliberalism. And so you were watching in the Trump administration this extreme kleptocracy. And I'm not speaking about just the personal kleptocracy of Trump and his family, which is extreme, but the kleptocracy of corporations and hedge funds that seek to extract money. The education department, we spend a...
So this is key to a lot of things, where you do see this whole sense of people actually getting into government, especially. I mean, like, it was. Here's some fun facts. There were people in the Obama administration that were going back and forth between corporate jobs and government jobs, and they were benefit from it. It was happening. But this is to a whole nother fucking extreme that we're seeing it under the Trump administration. Like, people aren't going between the two jobs anymore. They're quite literally saying, hey, even if it violates the emoluments clause, I'm still going to have my fucking hotels, and I'm going to make money that way. I don't know. Emoluments clause be damned, right? But it kind of still goes to that conversation about how it's people that are first they down the government, saying that it's ineffectual, it doesn't benefit anyone, and then by the same token, they are actually using it to make off with all the profits. The great American robbery is happening. And it's fucked up. But let's continue.
about $800 billion a year on education. We have placed a lobbyist, Betsy DeVos, who has never even wasn't educated in essentially who has this mantra that we're going to destroy public education to make it better. And they want that money. And they're getting it through charter schools, which we know do not perform in states like Michigan, where DeVos's foundation has set up numerous for-profit charter schools. We know it doesn't function better. We know it's a form of educational apartheid in the sense that they will refuse to accept not only poor students, students of color, but students with learning disabilities, students for whom English is a second language because they're more expensive to educate. They have a kind of for-profit model. They're completely vocational. They destroy teachers' unions. They bring in people who are ill-equipped to teach and essentially teach by rote. And this is just written.
And so, here's the thing, and I've heard a lot of parents actually put their hopes into charter schools for their kids. And when you're a parent, yeah, of course you want the fucking best for your kid. But what ends up happening in a lot of this with charter schools is they defund or reduce funding for the public schools that may be right around that same area, and it creates I'm in Chicago. Rahm Emanuel did this. He closed down. He said the attendance was low in a lot of the public schools and closed down 50 fucking public schools because they were poor performing, and turned around and opened up another 25 charter schools. Poor performance and low attendance. And instead of staffing these schools, instead of having these teachers moved around, which would be beneficial for students, no, you take away the public school that's right in the neighborhood because of fucking reasons, because you want to put more money into charter schools. And right after that, you saw where I believe it was called the Uno School, where they had some big ass scandal because the charter schools were fudging the numbers on the test. That shit happened here in fucking Chicagoland, the Chicagoland area, actually in the city of Chicago. But because you wanted to put your money into charter schools because they were all new and different, and you were getting kickbacks from the shit. And it's been determined in fucking Michigan that Betsy DeVos failed a lot of schools and caused a lot of schools to be fucked up. But because, the free market has decided that people need to actually be, the free market needs to run free in so many different ways, in so many different forms. It costs students their education. And the education of students is a valuable thing. You can't get that time back. You can't get that time back when a mindset is actually set in about rote memorization from just to make a test score, and not actually even teaching students, not even expanding on how people should actually be as fucking students, or learn to a way of thinking, not what to think. You're not even this is the legacy of always want to divert money into charter schools versus actually making sure that we have students that are willing to learn and are directed to actually learn in a productive way. But let's continue.
Large now. So you have her brother, of all people, Eric Prince, attempting to privatize the war in Afghanistan. You have Bose Allen Hamilton, which gets 99% of its revenue from the federal government by privatizing intelligence, which, of course, where Edward Snowden came from. Right. And that fusion, by the way, of corporate access to all of our personal information and government access to all of our information. We have 16 roughly intelligence agencies, and 70 or more percent of its work is done by private contractors. So that's the stage that we're in. You see in distressed cities, Detroit would be an extreme example, but any city really, where they are selling off their municipal assets, their sewers, their parking authority, anything, to try and pay back usury loans at high interest rates that they have had to take out of Wall Street, especially after 2008, in order to continue to have the city function. The main institutions left in most American cities, when they have them, are universities and hospitals. So I would say that presages a very frightening scenario, because not only is it not sustainable, but eventually it will lead to systems collapse. And
and this is one of the key things about what happened. A lot of cities had to take out horrible ass loans, especially after the 2008 crash, and it was just fucking horrifying. And a lot of cities and municipalities and states haven't recovered. You heard cities and states actually defaulting on their debt, credit scores going down, and all of things happening because of what happened in 2008. All of these things happened because all of these monstrous ass loans that a lot of people had to, a lot of municipalities, not just people. The 2008 crash didn't just hurt people. It fucking hurt everyone. How do I do it? How did Gary Oldman do it? Everyone! Fucking nerd. But let's continue.
Talking about the inability of urban areas to collect the garbage. People can't pay their property taxes. So we're
Detroit, they couldn't pay for the water.
Right, and so they do a hostile takeover, and they bring in somebody who poisons the families, including the children of the city, pumping toxic water out of the Detroit River because they don't want to purify it. I mean, that's I think Detroit is an extreme example of where we're heading.
All right, let me push this. One of the symptoms of the capitalism, at least as it's developing here in the United States, is well known. It's the growing gap between rich and poor. It's been underway at least 30 to 40 years, a kind of rollback of what happened out of the Depression and the war. Here's the question that I think is on millions of American people's mind. How much further can this go before it reaches some point of intolerability, so that people, or is that the wrong question to ask? In other words, this very stage, as you put it, of a capitalist decay or decline, has with it the conditions that you might expect provokes a resistance. Do you see that? Or is it a wrong question?
No, and the elites are acutely aware of that.
So the question is, how far can you push before they start pushing back, and start pushing back with some teeth? Because it's more of the people that are in the lower economic classes and stances than people in the higher end. How far? Let's continue.
Which is why they have militarized police forces, handing military-grade equipment, including tanks we saw on the streets of Ferguson, 50 caliber machine guns. Most of these cops don't even know how to use these weapons. And the wholesale surveillance, which is a characteristic of any totalitarian society. As Hannah Arendt writes, you collect information on all of the citizenry not to seek a crime, but when you want to criminalize a person or a segment of the society, you have information by which you can use in order to justify, even though it's innocuous. So the elites are well aware that there's blowback. What I worry is that with the complete collapse of the left in the United States, unlike in Europe, where there are kind of residual pockets, still communist socialist entities certainly atrophied, but ours were just destroyed in the name of kind of the war against communism. If there are anarchic uprisings, which I think there will be, then without vision, and without a national kind of focus, i.e., I think your case and mine, that would be a kind of socialism, then they're easily quelled because they can be dealt with as individual brush fires across the landscape. And certainly all the tools of the state, or the mechanisms that the state has accrued to itself, and we're not just talking about the physical mechanisms of wholesale surveillance. And
so that's actually interesting. So what he quite literally just said was that, well, if they don't have a centralized head, then they'll be easier to take out. As far as the different, groups that you actually see. And this is the whole elite's whole thing of wanting to actually control the populace. The thing about it is, maybe 20 years ago, that would have been the case. And yeah, they're trying to catch up with the digital age with a lot of the damn, that's taking forever. The digital age, it's a lot of the case where there are doing surveillances on people, groups, and things of that nature. But this whole movement, this left pull of populism is becoming so radicalized that you see a motherfucking socialist, in some cases tied for first, in some cases tied for second or third, and you see somebody who's actually a capitalist but leans so far socialist, leading the Democratic Party's primary, which we haven't even had votes for yet. This blowback is so underestimated that, yes, the elites can actually say, well, we want to do this, we want to have this. But what's happening now is it was a brush fire here or a brush fire there. Now it's becoming a lot more than what these elites thought they could get. And it's becoming fucking amazing. But let's continue.
And, a massive homeland security, these groups are all infiltrated and monitored. But also the legal mechanisms, the ability to deny people habeas corpus. We see in marginal communities where people of color live, mini police states, where they have no right to due process. I teach in the prison system in New Jersey. My students never got a trial. And in fact, the ones who were usually didn't do the crime, many of them didn't do the crime, and as you said, many of them in there for drugs. Well, most of them are in there because they're poor and black. If they go to trial, then the way they force you to plea out is by stacking you with 15, 20 charges, most of which you didn't commit, including...
So, and this goes to another detractor, we're going to call them that, where they say that this is literally somebody who's working in the field that says, no, they mess over people of color. This is still being debated that this is happening in a systematic way so they can wash their hands of, well, I'm not being racist, I'm just following the law. But let's continue.
Including major charges like kidnapping, which has a 25-year sentence, and then saying, well, we'll remove this, we'll remove that, and you can go to prison for 11 years or whatever, 15. These sentences are quite long often. But if they go to trial, then they get all the charges. The public defender is not going to spend more than 10 or 15 minutes with them. I mean, I've taught people in prison. I taught one guy who had life plus 154 years. He never committed a violent crime. It was all weapons, possessions, and drug charges. That's not uncommon. And so they use those people as kind of poster children and say, well, look what happened to them. You don't want to go to trial. So 94% roughly of the people in our prison system never got a trial. Then you've got all the SWAT teams that can kick down doors. These people are going for nonviolent drug offenses, terrorizing people in the middle of the night. You've got, it's far worse than stop and frisk, racial profiling. As you know, I sued President Obama over Section 1021 of the National Defense Authorization Act, which overturns the 1878 Posse Comitatus Act that prohibits the military from acting as a domestic police force. We won the case in the Southern District Court of New York. The Obama administration immediately appealed. It went to the Second Circuit. The Second Circuit wouldn't rule because it's so patently unconstitutional. And what they did is they used another case. I was part of the case against Clapper versus Amnesty International on wholesale surveillance, was the Supreme Court said we didn't have a right to bring the case. So the Second Circuit said, well, he doesn't have Hedges. It was Hedges versus Obama. He doesn't have a right to bring the case. In that case, he doesn't have standing, and so therefore he doesn't have standing. And so they never ruled. They just threw it out, and we filed a cert or petition to the Supreme Court. They wouldn't take it. It's now law. So they have the mechanism now to deploy the military in the streets of American cities, to seize American citizens who they deem to be terrorists, strip them of.
So that is so fucking disappointing. So if you're old enough to remember, there was a movie called The Siege. In the movie The Siege, it was terrorists who were going around in New York, and they were splinter cells, and they would go around causing bombings. And it was actually almost a tour de force of star power. It was Bruce Willis before he became angry old man, more angry old man than what he is now. But it was during the height of I think it was during the height of Die Hard with a Vengeance. It also had Denzel Washington in it, and it was an FBI director, director of an office, and they were trying to find what the terrorist was, and the terrorist actually had killed people, but it was a meeting. It was just a meeting of the groups, and the mayor's calling the army. And at that time, Bruce Willis was on you don't want the army here. He brought out M16. He's like, this is an M16. You know what's going to be fired, and you know how it's going to fucking sound. And you know that you're going to be in a war zone. You don't want that in the streets, because if the military comes in and plays police, they will act as if it is a engagement, and you don't want that shit to happen. And they treat everybody as an enemy, and it got so bad that one of the agents of the FBI son fit the profile. They literally they rounded teens up because they rounded these teens up. They said, hey, they profiled him, and god damn it, because he fit the profile, Middle Eastern descent. One of the agents of the FBI son was caught up in the mix because he fit the profile. Because that's what the military does. Comes in and says, we're going to control the situation. And they fucking really controlled the situation. And it got so bad that quite literally Bruce Willis tortured in the movie a man to death who was an American citizen. And they used that law to say, hey, you couldn't do that. That was illegal. And that was the quote-unquote happy end of it. But for them to fucking overturn this shit now, that's fucked up. People want to complain about how people hate America because they hate America. When I saw that movie, and after all of that shit happened, where we went over and treated when I saw that movie, that's one of those times where it's just if somebody was doing this shit to me, I'd be pissed off too. And now they are giving carte blanche of doing this shit here. And the thing about it is, it's called fucking empathy. I wouldn't want the shit done to me. Why would I ask for it to be done to somebody else? But let's continue.
Of due process and hold them indefinitely in military detention centers. That's law. And we saw what happened to 110,000 Japanese Americans during World War II. In fact, Judge Catherine B. Forrest, in her opinion, cited that internment of Japanese Americans as now being legal. So the legal and the physical mechanisms are there. And again,
In effect, you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the folks who run this society, they kind of know that they're pushing against the potential for real blowback and are therefore taking these steps almost in preparation.
completely.
The very thing I said in the first half, we don't prepare for the storm, this is a storm they are preparing for.
Yeah, and the Pentagon's preparing for climate change. They've issued numerous reports. Even the head of the CIA, Woolsey, wrote a long report, I think it was 2003, talking about not only mass migrations, but mass migrations from the coast of Florida. I mean, they have to live in the real world if they want to retain power. So they know very well what's coming, and they're ready. And unfortunately, we live in a society utterly awash in electronic hallucinations, Derek Jensen calls them. We're awash in lies. And the corporate...
So that's actually pretty fucking interesting. We have a fucking president who sit back and says climate change is a Chinese hoax. However, continually, the fucking Department of Defense still accounts for climate change. Not just for unstable parts of the world, but for shit that happens here. But climate change is a Chinese hoax. Just like fucking Dorian was gonna hit Alabama. Let's continue.
Press. You can see it, you mentioned it in the first half of your show, but the coverage of the devastation in Houston and Florida. What was it? It was feel-good stories about heroic rescues or dramatic photos of flooded streets but not a word about climate change. These are patterns of, because we have disrupted the climate, these are going to become, Houston will get hit again. Florida will get hit again. We know this.
That's right.
Climate scientists have
They expect Jose, the one that's already building, to do it again?
Right, model after model. We know what's coming. But the corp...
All right, so, and yeah, this was a year ago. I don't think Jose hit. I would have to check that right now. I'm just... That's just fucking interesting. Like, really, like, we have this issue where we know shit is going down, but because it's inconvenient, it may... And it's not even that it'll mess up individual's life. No, because it's inconvenient to corporations. Then that's the fucking problem. Because you can't be inconvenient to corporations. Because corporations, they have to make money, my friend. And they're people. And yet and still, we're told to do shit like drink from paper straws or you recycle. Let us dump or pollute as much as we want. Fuck out of here. Let's continue.
Corporations, in particular the fossil fuel industry, and we can't let the animal agriculture industry off the hook, they have a lock on systems of public information and public education. So, yes, they know what's coming. Yes, they are preparing, both legally and physically. And I think what's most ominous is that when you walk into marginal communities where poor people of color live, that is their practice space. And should there be unrest outside of those communities? I mean, mass incarceration, which is obscene in this country, 2.3 million people, almost all poor people of color, although the poor whites are increasing, including women are swelling that population, that's a form of social control. They do it through terror. This is what lethal police force in this country is about. It's like lynching in that it's not just about killing, I think, 3.1 people, unarmed fellow citizens, usually people of color, poor people, a day. but like lynching, it creates a state of terror. So that if you are the parents, even the mayor of New York has had to concede this. If you are the parents with a young black man who walks out, you want him home by dark because he may not come home. I mean, this is just like Jim Crow South.
So that's actually fucking interesting. Now, being an African American man, I've heard it all. Like, respect police or do this is to what the police tells you. When you see somebody that's unarmed getting shot, the first question is asked, what did he do? How fucked up is it that a person has to say, that a person actually has to, you know, they have to actually feel like they have to walk on eggshells around the police just because the police may have a bad day. You can't mouth off to the police. I thought the Constitution actually prevented you from. The Constitution prevented the state from making a law to ban your speech. But that's one thing that is told to every young African American. Don't mouth off at the police. And fun fact, they're carrying, just like he says, this shit is spilling out everywhere now. It's going to, like, I literally saw, quite literally, it was a woman who, old white woman, heavy set and everything. She got pissed off at the cop, and the cop fucking tased her because she mouthed off at him. It doesn't just start affecting the people that you feel that are lower on society's rungs than you are. Because once they start thinking that they have it set, they start to get fucking bold. They start to go after other communities. Because what happens is, once they feel that they have the boot securely on the neck of somebody else, pretty soon they're going to come for your neck as well. But let's continue.
And when Hannah Arendt writes about the plight of the stateless, she herself being stripped of her German passport, living in France with no rights, said that when you create both the legal and the physical mechanisms to strip people of rights, rights become privileges. And that's where we are. And once rights become privileges, then they can be taken away from anybody. So I live in Princeton, which, you know, is increasingly the domain of the upper 1%, unfortunately. And so you don't see it. You don't see it in Manhattan. But all of the mechanisms, the constitutional mechanisms by which we once were able to defend ourselves, have been taken from us by judicial fiat, by a reinterpretation. I mean, the Constitution is quite clear in the 14th Amendment about search and seizure. They don't have a right to all of our personal information without a warrant, yet they have it. Right to privacy, all of that's gone. And then they'll take, through Citizens United, the absurd idea that unlimited, dark campaign contributions by corporations is the right to petition the government, or a form of free speech. These are the legal system, or the judicial system, the 1 million lawyers in this country, when the history of this country is written, you know, where were they? Where were the, you know, all these people talking about the you know, going back to the Constitution, like Scalia and others? Well, what about privacy? What about search and seizure under the 14th? You know, the legal system, as you know, I don't want to draw comparisons too tightly with not.
So before he gets into that, and it's just something that just struck me. Asset forfeit seizure is something that, if you're suspected of using anything in the commission of a crime, whatever the police suspect you of using in the commission of a crime, they will take your shit. They quite literally will take your shit. And in some cases, People don't recover that. People don't recover that. But yet, we're protected against unlawful search and seizure. But let's continue.
Nazi Germany, but they have been a bulwark of. They've sold their soul to corporations and corporate power, and this is not just true. I mean, we have figures that the Trump administration, Gorsuch and others, has pushed, but Obama was just as guilty as this. I mean, most of the federal judgeships that he appointed, they were all corporate lawyers. They all served corporate power.
Listen,
And so that's actually a key thing. That's why the surveillance state was so highly contested by a lot of people in the time of Obama. That's why the drone strikes were contested, because they said, well, we're the good guys and we're doing it. However, what happened when you don't get the good guys wielding that power, that precedent that you set? And people tried to warn the Obama administration. A benevolent dictator is only as long lasts as long. A benevolent dictatorship only lasts as long as that benevolent dictator. And quite frankly, you see this shit where people actually, and then the Trump administration came back behind the Obama administration and just started doing shit on steroids. I was just looking into a story just today where the Trump administration is getting rid of doing the primaries. Because during the primaries, one, it questions Trump. Maybe some people may not want to vote for Trump. But yet and still, you see this whole thing of, well, Obama did it. And because Obama did it, they feel it's carte blanche to do it themselves when they're doing the shit on a whole different fucking level. Shit, I got me a baby crocodile. Not a baby shark, but a baby crocodile. Yeah. But let's continue.
I'm reminded, because of being in the field of economics, as I'm watching the so-called tax reform process underway, that from Trump on down through all the others, there's this endless talk about helping the middle class, the lower class, cutting their taxes. And when you look at what they're actually doing, there's something here that's almost genius. They're cutting taxes on corporations, 12 ways to Sunday, and on very wealthy people. The numbers are that you can put together are clear, but their ability to have the press carry their verbal nonsense instead of the analytic means that you have a kind of general consensus to do something which the same people who believe in this would hate if they understood what happened to them.
Right. Well, first of all,
what's going on? You're the journalist in a way. Tell me.
Well, first of all, it's not a tax reform; it's a tax boycott.
Yes.
I mean, most of these Fortune 500 companies are Citibank. They don't pay any taxes at all. So let's be.
So that's actually pretty fucking. That's a pretty big indictment. One, the whole idea of the middle class. It's not what these people actually do. It's not what these people actually think. A lot of this helping middle class are helping millionaires or people that have $500,000 in income and shit like that. Last time I checked, these aren't fucking middle class. No, they've made middle income with the raging wealth disparity that we have into, instead of saying middle class, they really mean middle income. And you actually saw some of them actually saying this when this tax bill came out. In middle income, if I'm somebody that only subsists on $20,000 a year, depending on my area, or $30,000 a year because of minimum wage, versus somebody that makes millions or tens of millions a year, the middle income is not going to be somebody that's going to be making 50 grand a year. That's not going to happen. But increasingly, a lot of people are what we consider lower class or lower economical class. It's a fucking hard thing to think about. You may be making it, you may not be super poor, but you may be barely making it, excuse me, but you're not what these tax breaks are for. They're for these rich fucks who only think of themselves and only say, "Hey, we need the money," and the fucking press doesn't follow up with this shit. They don't say how many people that's going to be making less than 50 grand a year are going to benefit from these taxes. No, what they say is, well, what the administration says is right, and we're not going to challenge them because, one, it's in our best interest because we benefit from this shit as well, and two, well, we want access. We want to be able to have those interviews with these people when they're coming in and when they want to speak. But let's continue.
Be clear about what they've orchestrated. That's the first thing. The second thing, and Matt Taibbi did a nice book on this called Divide.
Right.
There's a two-tiered legal system in the country. So if you're a small business owner, you are crushed. I mean, you can pay up to 40% of your profits in taxes. You have all sorts of regulations. But if you're Goldman Sachs, that's very different. And so the perception among our dwindling small business community is that government is intrusive. There are too many regulations. Taxes are too high. And they're right. But on the upper scale, where all these lobbyists, banking lobbyists, and hedge fund lobbyists are writing the legislation, it's naked kleptocracy and pillage.
But then tell me, for all these small businessmen, and I agree with everything you said, they've been through this now. They have seen their critique of the government as intrusive and burdensome be used not to relieve them of the burdens, but to help the biggest ones. They've been through this. Can they be fooled again?
Well, it's not a matter of being fooled. It's where do you go to get the information? I mean, PBS is a wholly owned subsidiary of the Koch brothers. No, literally.
Yeah.
The news out.
So this is actually key. It's where you get a lot of news outlets. One, they depend on the advertisers to actually make sure that they are funded, and quite literally, you won't get news presenters. Like, you may actually see where, you'll have news hosts, in some cases news actors, actually challenge some people in power. But that's the minority. Those are the exceptions. Like, you never really see too far left of people that are on news organization channels like CNN or NBC. You actually may see a few. And I'm going to say you actually may see a few. For example, you actually see where Cuomo actually has people from the Young Turks on it. He actually has people where they can actually say, he's quote unquote challenging, and he has different spectrum. And that's getting him fucking views because nobody else is doing this shit. And it's fucking unbelievable that you have to go this far in order to be able to say, yeah, I'm standing out from the crowd, because what ends up happening is nobody who is giving progressives, nobody who's giving these people that have a far left view of things any space. But you'll get it where you have people like, you'll get fucking neo-Nazis airtime versus a progressive. The reason being because they don't want to fucking rock the boat because it's their fucking boat. And I'm not saying that they have some hidden directive to say, well, we're hiding progressives. No, they're hired because they won't rock the boat. Nobody says Anderson Cooper is told to say, well, no, you can't praise, leftists or things of that nature. He was hired because they knew he wasn't going to do it when he first was chosen. That's why he was hired, because he wasn't going to rock the boat. The same guy who was famous for standing in front of hurricanes, he's a fucking heir to the Vanderbilt fortune. He's not going to talk about more taxes on the rich. He's not going to complain about that because he's the rich. Fucking Tucker Carlson. He's actually getting money from Swanson because his stepmother was an heiress. These motherfuckers are not going to rock the fucking boat because it's their boat. But let's continue.
I was just on WGBH. David Koch sits on the board. So where do you go for the information? You have to go to the fringes to your show, to what I write, but we've been so marginalized. And as I was saying before the show, that's not true in Canada. I'm on prime time on CBC, nationally, for a half hour. That radio, I'm nationally in France on Radio France, or my last book got a 2-page spread in Le Monde. It's on, and of course my last book here, although it got on the front page of the New York Times Sunday Book Review, was given to the troglodyte George Backer, who trashed it, which is why they gave it to him. Yeah. So it's that kind of rational discussion of economic pillage and corporate power is unacceptable within the mainstream discourse. Just like climate change, just like all sorts of stuff. And so unless you're extremely proactive, and most people are not proactive about getting information, and less people read, which I think is a tremendous problem, because you have to struggle through. I didn't read all of 3 books of Marx's Capital, but I did get through one, which has more math than I needed. But you have to read that. You have to read Pouillon. You have to read the stuff you write. You have to, and so that.
Now, I will say this. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. Reading these books from a bygone era where you can get most of the information from books is fucking hard. I'd rather put it on an iPad or Kindle. I'd rather hear speeches and shit like that. I'm fucking intellectually lazy sometimes. And a lot of people are. I'm a little bit more curious than what some people are. The reason why this show, this half-ass show that I do, the reason why I started doing it this format is because while I'm playing video games, I listen to the shit. Not everybody's going to do that. Not everybody's, after 10 hours of work, is going to sit back and want to listen to people talk about economics or how the world is going to shit. Because, capitalists are, directing us that. No, I won't even say they're directing us. Because they're directing their modus operandi to look for profit in so many different ways that they're saying fuck everything else. Not everybody's gonna do that, and I fucking recognize that. Definitely fucking recognize that, but it's just crazy where we get this issue where it would benefit us more. One of the reasons why I do this, why I just started deciding to broadcast this, so I can actually get people thinking about the shit, getting people to actually look at the shit. And even if you don't believe everything that I say, you can actually go to research. You can actually, I watch the whole joke about how undercover police officers were having families with the people they were quote unquote watching it. it caused me to actually start reading some fucking articles about it. I'm not gonna discount doing research online through videos or reading articles, but it takes more. And books are actually part of that. But don't forget, you can actually hear people comment about shit too. So let's continue.
Takes I mean, there's, I think, a small percentage of the population that will do it, but it's probably in single digits.
All right, here comes the $64 trillion question. Given what you write, given what you see, given what I see, given what I write, given what our audience, which is why we have an audience, is it premature to think of a significant movement for social change emerging here in the United States? In the title of your book, The Moral Imperative to Revolt, is that imperative being felt and seized and internalized by the people of the United States, or at least a significant portion? Do you see the blowback from everything you've witnessed and described? Do you see that?
Yes, but it may be a far-right blowback. There is going to be blowback. We're in a period, Alexander Berkman wrote an essay, and he talked about, when old ideas, in the old turn of the century it was monarchy, divine right of kings. In our case, it's neoliberalism. When they lose their credibility, and neoliberalism has lost. It's,
Yes.
it's a zombie ideology. No one believes, even the banks don't believe it, because how can you believe it if you then go loot the U.S. Treasury? I mean, who knows what they believe other than greed is good.
Yeah.
So that ideology, which quite effectively stripped the nation state of its assets and impoverished the working class to make it the working poor, and radically atrophied and diminished the middle class, it doesn't have its currency. But we don't have, and this is what Berkman writes, anything to take its place yet. And so that's a very dangerous moment. For me, a seminal and very frightening moment was the reaction of the state to the Occupy movement. Because what the Occupy movement asked was so tepid, as so many, I mean, if you remember Tiananmen Square, or even when I covered the revolution in East Germany.
So that was a frightening experience of what happened with the Occupy movement. And what do I mean by that? Well, quite simply, they actually try to use a lot of heart power. They, like, when you see what happened with the Occupy movement, and remember, one of the campaign promises of Barack Obama was, if teachers need to march, I'm going to put on my soft shoes and march out there with them. But when it came to young people demanding that the top 1% actually started paying their fair share, he wasn't out there with them. They tried to use force. Then they tried to use coercion by sending undercover people in there. Still didn't work. Then what finally worked was, it's kind of nasty in the parks, and it to be fair, it was some cleaning that needed to go on. Mostly that was in the halls of government and the financial institution that really needed the cleaning, but they got them to actually move. Worst mistake, because what ended up happening is they weren't allowed to come back. What's even bigger is that, you had the far right wing actually explode from this shit. But the funny part about it is, you also had the left wing, and a lot of those people are now working in the campaigns of Bernie Sanders. somebody who, let me just tell you how I first found out about Bernie Sanders. I watched the Michael Moore movie Capitalism, a Love Story. I saw that motherfucker in there. I was like, he has some interesting policies. And when he ran, Bernie Sanders has quite literally ran for public office a few times. And a lot of it was just, he probably almost always got out before primaries really started. But it's just like Donald Trump. Like, Donald Trump has ran for president multiple times as well. It's just before the primaries started, he found his way out. But every so slightly, you see the country moving in this direction. And yeah, it was a detour for a lot of people to go hard right. But like now, that shit ain't working no more. Because people are actually seeing what the fuck is going on. But let's wrap this video up.
Originally in Leipzig, the opposition just wanted legal recognition. I mean, they ended up overthrowing the Stasi state. So, what the Occupy movement, what did they ask for? And they did have demands. They asked for that corporate power be restrained, that there be jobs programs, that there be universal health care.
And that the 1% 99 would not be that way.
Well, and that they would not be burdened with $100,000 in student loans while they were working in a deli. So, these were very rational, reasonable demands. And what was the response of the state? It was to, in a coordinated effort under the Obama, was to shut them down physically.
Yeah.
And that is dangerous. So is there going to be blowback? There is. But that blowback may be very ugly. It may be blowback by a disenfranchised white working class. What happens when these people realize that Trump has sold them out?
Right. Big question.
And they've all got guns. I mean,
and he is selling them out.
And he is selling them out. And thank God, Charlottesville, these on both sides, but in particular on the right, they were armed to the teeth. And all you need is one person to pull out their Glock and start firing the crowd, and you've got dozens wounded and dead.
Well, and this is just, wow, this is so prophetic, because what happened was, you see these people that are influenced by what fucking Donald Trump says, and you see idiots saying that these people are attacking my country, and oh yeah, let me go to a Walmart and fucking hurt these people. And it's just like, you're fucking up, man. Like, really, a lot of these guys don't realize how fucking unstable their followers are. They want to sit back and talk about Antifa. Oh, the guys in the mask, they don't want to show their face. But yet and still, I don't know. Let's continue.
And that's what's coming. And, of course, that's a gift to the state, because then they use it. What they want to, they're already using it to demonize the left. It's why I've been critical of the Black Bloc and Antifa. Their goal is to shut down even those of us who are nonviolent anti-capitalist act. They want that shut down, because internally these people are frightened. They know far better than you and I how utterly corrupt and depraved the system is. And I think Occupy frightened them immensely.
Yes.
More than the Occupy activists understood. Because if anybody knows how game the system is, it's all those criminals sitting in Goldman Sachs or Citibank. I mean, let's be clear, they are criminals. They are clearly under, if we consider massive fraud a criminal activity, they should be, I'm kind of a prison abolitionist, but they should be handing out soup somewhere, in Camden, New Jersey.
Cleaning their diapers. Yes, that's right.
Yeah, they know, and they're prepared. And the seizure of any state, paralysis, this is what we have, is political paralysis. The inability of the state or the government to respond to the most minimal rights and needs of the citizenry, and the diversion of all resources to the further enrichment of a global oligarchic criminal class, means that eventually, because these people only know one word, and that's more, means eventually there's blowback. But given the fact that the left has been so decimated in the United States, and what I see as often articulating the left, groups like Black Bloc and Antifa, which I find immature, juvenile, and catharsis is not how we carry out a revolution, throwing a rock through a window. We have to be extremely tactical and well thought out, and disciplined. I mean, we can have another show on Lenin, but Lenin understood, and Lenin understood.
So, here's the thing, and this is my criticism of the people who criticize the shit. Okay, cool. This is my critique of the people who criticize Antifa. I get why you're upset. They're the brick through the window of the establishment, and they make everybody look bad that's on the left. But their response to the fascism that is fucking happening at our fucking feet. Now, here's the fun fact. The elites need to have that fear. They do. They look at the presidential race, and I'm still going for Bernie Sanders regardless. They're so fucking scared of Bernie Sanders politically that he's gonna come in and clean their motherfucking clocks politically, that they're willing to go for somebody like Elizabeth Warren. Who fucking embarrasses them regularly in the halls of Congress? They're so scared. Now, I'm gonna say this. A lot of the problems Antifa are labeled with starting fights, they're not really starting fights, and every time it's a fight that's actually depicted, you see the full video and you see they're not the cause of the fight. They're just responding to the provocation, of which, when I say provocation, I mean physical provocation that are done to them by these bad actors that actually assault the Antifa first. And I quite literally, I know once you get down and lose your moral high ground and get down in the mud and the dirt with some of these bastards, they're going to use it as justification. But they're already using it for justification by the simple fact that you won't bow your head, so I must fight you the best, I must crush you. They're already using that as a justification. And you get these people that fight back a little bit. And even people on the left are saying, hey, no, don't do that. I personally, so if it comes, so it sweeps through here, and I miss it because it sweeps there. Okay, so yeah. I personally, one of the reasons why, let's be honest with you. Yes, Dr. King and the nonviolent civil rights movement actually helped. It drove the conversation. It drove the decision to make the sweeping changes that we needed in America at that fucking time. But make no motherfucking mistakes. They knew who to play to. Because there were people who, if they didn't deal with the quote unquote rational people, they knew the people that were waiting behind them to take their place. Now the thing about the people on the left is we control our crazies. We don't let them run shot over the rest of the party. People on the right, however, they are the crazies. They let the crazies run roughshod over by everybody else. Now, I'm not saying that you should respond with shit with violence. But a lot of the elites should actually be fearful that when you're dealing with the people that want dramatic change, but are willing to peacefully sit down and talk to you, they should be wary of the people that are not. I'm not advocating for violence at all. Farthest thing from the truth, because a lot of the wrong people will be fucking hurt from the violence. But make no mistake, they need to know that that threat is always there. They need to know the Hamptons aren't a defendable position. But let's continue.
Stood the danger of random acts of violence and terrorism, which he was rabidly against. We could very well slip into a kind of corporatized, militarized. It's not fascism because, as Sheldon Wolin points out, in fascism, politics trumps economics, and corporate totalitarianism, economics trumps politics, but some kind of very frightening dystopia.
Well, I don't want to leave us on a note of dystopia, but it's a realistic process, and we have to face it as part
We
of
have
the
to fight it.
maturity.
We have to fight it, and that's that great line I use at the end of my book. I don't fight fascists because I'm going to win. I fight fascists because they're fascists.
That's right. Thank you very much,
Thank
Chris.
you.
And thank all of you for joining us. Once again, I hope you found this as fascinating and interesting as I did. I want to thank you for partnering with us. I want to thank truthout.org, that independent source of news and analysis that has been a good partner for Economic Update for years. I look forward to talking with you again next week.
All right, so that is the show for today. I may get on a little bit later. I want to go to the store, actually get myself prepared for dinner, and I may come back with just some Spider-Man PS4 gaming. Wow, it's raining. So yeah, you guys may catch me back a little bit later when I do the PS4 gaming, PS4 Spider-Man gaming. So remember, you can actually please like and subscribe and follow me here on Twitch or Facebook Gaming. You'll see a lot of different mix. Eventually, I'm gonna do my drawing again, which you can actually find more of me doing drawing on my Facebook. On my YouTube page, which I actually put to my other websites. Whew. I have to get up and walk around now because I cannot just sit down for a couple hours without moving. Anyway, yeah. Wow, this was an old episode, and you're gonna find links to the actual channel and this actual video in the descriptions wherever I put the video. I want to thank everybody who's watched today. And I want to thank everybody who's enjoyed the channel. Remember to like and subscribe. I do want to extend an offer if you want to have a chat with me on stream to challenge whatever I'm saying, some of my views or beliefs. I invite you to leave a comment in the comment section. We can actually get something actually scheduled. And I want to thank everybody who's watched. You guys enjoy the rest of your evening. And, well, not enjoy, but I'll see you soon. Peace.